Hey everybody, and welcome back to part 3 of making a magic card template in Photoshop. In this video I'm going to be making the main elements of the card frame which tie together the rest of the parts of the frame and also indicate the color identity of the card. So the first thing I'm going to make is a small line that goes around the entire frame, and this is going to be a color indicator to show what the color identity of the card is. So first I make a new layer and fill it just with red. And then I select the entire layer and use the contract selection tool to contract it down and get an even border around all the sides. That leaves me with square corners though, and I need round edges for the corners of the card. So I just do a little bit of math to figure out what the radius needs to be based on the radius that I picked for the corners of the card. And then I make a small circle using the circle selection tool of that radius. Basically, it's just an overcomplicated way to make sure that the curve on the corner is exactly the right size and proportional to the other curves that I have on the corners. You could also just eyeball it or use a stroke layer effect or contract from the rounded border or something like that, but I like to just do it this way to get it pixel perfect. And then I'm actually just going to cut away the one corner that I did and then duplicate it with Ctrl-J to paste it in all the other corners, just so that I know the curve is exactly the same in all four corners. And then I just merge all the four corner layers and then make selections and stretch the parts so that they're all connected properly. So for this frame, my idea was that I'd like the thin line around to get thicker at the bottom so that the text box and power and toughness can sit inside of it. So I actually make a duplicate of the bottom of the frame and then drag it up a little bit and fill it in so that it's thicker on the bottom. And then I just adjust things around a little bit so it fits nicely. So the next thing I'm going to do is make a thin color indicator line around the title bar. So to make the thin line around it, first I'm going to start by making a selection of the shape of the title bar. And how you can do that is just hold Control and click on a layer, and you'll get a selection that is the exact shape of whatever's on that layer. And then I use Control-Shift-I to invert my selection. So now I have everything selected that's outside of the title bar. So now I can draw with a brush, and I'm drawing everywhere except for the inside of the title bar so I can retain that transparency that I intended. I'm going to make that selection a layer mask, and then I will invert my selection again. So now I have just the inside of the title bar selected. And then I'll expand my selection so I have a little line outside of it. And now when I draw using that selection on the layer with the layer mask that's excluding everything inside the title bar, now I'll get a line that goes around the outside but not on the inside. I know that's sort of complicated and not super easy to see because on the screen recording you can't really see my selections very well, but there's a lot of ways that you can achieve that exact same thing using contracting and expanding your selections and using a combination of layer masks and selections. I'm sure you can figure out your own way to do that as well. You could just use a simple stroke layer style, but if you use a stroke, then it's also going to expand towards the inside. So you still need the layer mask excluding the inside of the title frame if you have transparency. It's pretty complicated, but I'm sure if you know the basics of Photoshop and you know the tools that I'm talking about, you'll be able to play around with it and figure out how to get the same effect. So at this point, I'm going to make a new layer and just fill it with green, and then I'll make it a clipping mask and clip it to the red shape layer that I have going. And the reason I'm using a clipping mask instead of just changing the red to green, I'll talk about that later. But for now, I'm just changing it to a green tone similar to what it's going to be in the final version, just so that I can get a better visualizer of the effects and textures that I'm about to put on it. So next I'm going in using layer styles to add effects to the green shape that we just put in. And keep in mind that you want to add the layer styles to the shape that you're clipping all of the colors too. You're not adding the layer. I'm not putting the layer effect on the green layer. I'm putting it on the red shape layer that we originally made, because if you're using clipping masks and you're clipping to a layer with layer effects, the layer effects actually apply over all the clipping mask layers. So even though there's a green layer coming in and covering all of the red, the layer effects still apply. So you want to add it to the layer on the bottom that you're clipping everything to, and not the layers on the top that are getting clipped to the shape. That probably didn't make a lot of sense if you don't understand how clipping masks work, but clipping masks are definitely a tool worth learning about, so I'd recommend going and watching some tutorials on those if you're not familiar with how that function works. So the bevel effect that I've applied is visible on the inner edge of the green part, but since the outer edge is actually covered by the black border that goes around the card, it can't be seen when the black border is visible. So to add a bevel where the green meets the black, what I'm actually going to do is apply a layer effect to the black border layer, and instead of setting it to inner bevel, I'll set it to outer bevel. So now it's going to be on the outer edge of the black, which ends up looking like the green is beveled. So that's how I'm achieving the layer effect where those meet, even though the green doesn't actually end there, it extends under the black layer. And a simpler way to do this might just be to control click on the black border layer so that I've selected the shape of the black border, and then just cut that out of the layer that I'm trying to apply the layer effect to. The reason that I didn't do that is because then where the green meets the black, it creates sometimes awkward spaces where there's actually a tiny bit of transparency between the two. And so that's why I like to just have the green go all the way to the edge, and then the black overlaps it so that there's no weird spots where they meet in the middle that they don't entirely meet, because it is just an inherent flaw of the pixel-based system. If I were doing vectors, then I could have them meet exactly, and there would be no flaws there. But since there's pixels where they meet, especially around the corners, there can be flaws, so I just like having them overlap so that I know that there's not going to be any tiny pixel gaps or anything. Here I'm just messing with the layer effects a little bit more. It looks like I ended up deciding on doing a softer edge instead of a sharp bevel. I think I might end up changing that again by the end of the video. I don't remember, but right now it's smoother than it was. A lot of stuff ends up getting changed through the process of making a frame. Like this, I think I had a sketch for this one, and it ended up looking totally different than what the sketch was, just because through the process of making it, I decided to try different things and not go the same direction that I originally thought. So it doesn't always go exactly the way you plan it, but that's kind of better sometimes. So here I'm pasting in just a black and white texture file. This is like a kind of cloudy, splotchy texture that I use for a lot of my frames. I like to just put in a little bit of texture over elements of the frame so that it's not so flat and just like one color. So I would recommend adding some texture, and you can go grittier, you can go smoother. Like there's a lot of creative freedom in this aspect. So to add a bit of texture with an image, generally I'll just go grab an image of a texture that I like, drop it to grayscale, just drop the saturation all the way so it's all black and white, and then make a clipping mask, clip it to your other colors, and then just use a blending mode that you like a color burn or multiply or overlay is usually what I'll use. So I pasted in the texture, and then it ended up being a little more contrasty than I was looking for. It looked kind of like a marbled type effect. So I went in with like a cloudy custom brush and then changed it up a little bit. And so it ended up just like a subtle cloudy texture. If you don't want to bother going to look for royalty-free images to use as textures, one good tool is just the Render Clouds tool built into Photoshop. Basically, it just renders random noise patterns, which you can use for a texture, and it's all random and built in, so super easy to use if you don't want to go hunting for images to use. So now that I have my textures dialed in how I want them, I'm going to go in and make more color layers and then add them to the clipping mask and clip them down to the same shape that I have the green layer clipped down to. Um, so basically, this is just a very easy way of making the color modulate. So basically, all I need to do, say if I need to change it from green to red, is make the green layer not visible and make the red layer visible. And you could achieve the same thing by not using clipping masks and just duplicating the thing multiple times and doing like hue and saturation changes. But the nice thing about doing it this way and just clipping everything to one shape is that if you want to make a change to the texture or something, if say you want to change the texture and you want to change it for all 6 or 7 variations of color, then you literally just change the texture, and whenever you go in to change it to whatever color you need, the texture change will apply because it's all in one clipping mask chain. Or if you need to change the shape, then it'll be changed no matter which color you have selected. I don't download PSDs of other people's frames very often, but back when I was starting learning this stuff and I didn't know how to make templates myself, I did download a couple just to figure out how to work them, and I'm pretty sure all of them were organized so that it's like there's a layer this is the red frame, this is the green frame, this is the blue frame, and just everything is all merged. And so it's not editable at all like this method is. Like if I wanted to make a change that applies to all of the colors in one of those very basic frames or templates, then it wouldn't be possible. I'd have to do it like 6 or 7 times over for every variation that I want the change to apply to. But with this, the color is isolated from everything else. You change the shape of the thing it's getting clipped to, and no matter what color you're changing it to, it still applies the same. So it's just way better this way if you're doing stuff where you need to make changes. It's just way more convenient, and I think more people should apply this for modular card templates. Another advantage of doing it this way is that with clipping masks, you don't have to clip it just to a single layer. You could do a clipping mask to a folder that has multiple things in it. So say you have a creature version of your frame with a power and toughness bar and a non-creature version with no power and toughness bar. Literally all you would have to do, instead of the way other templates are organized, say you have the blue non-creature template on and then you want to add the power and toughness bar. You would have to go hunt through your layers to find the blue power and toughness bar to enable that one, because otherwise if you enable one of the other colors, it's going to be all mismatched. But with this method, since the color is getting clipped down to the folder, and then you could have multiple layers in the folder, and you could turn on your power and toughness layer that's in the folder that everything's getting clipped to, and so it's automatically going to be the color that the rest of your frame is, and you don't have to go hunting for all these variations of elements that are all the different colors. It's just way more concise and editable this way. So at this point, I've added all my different color layers, so I can change this template to be able to be whichever color it needs to be. Although I do go in and edit this gold layer because usually for gold frames, it comes across as just like yellowish or tan-ish. So I like to add a little bit of shine to it so that it comes across more as like gold, because I feel like if it's just flat, it doesn't really come off as like a metallic sheen. So I draw on these little white lines and then play with my blending options just to make it pop a little more and seem less like brown and more like actually gold. So now the frame has full color functionality with the 5 main colors plus gold and colorless. One thing that I didn't record for this video that I would like to mention is if you want your card template to be able to function with dual colors. Like say you want it to be red, green, like fade from red on the left to green on the right. There is a very easy way to do that. What you do is you add layer masks. So say if you want it to fade left and right, one color on the left, one on the right, just use the rectangular selection tool, select the left half of the frame, and then just, if you want it to fade, go into select, transform selection, and then feather it like 100 pixels or something. And then you add that layer mask to one of your color layers. So say you put it on the red layer, and then you turn on red. Now it's being masked to just the left side, and then it fades off into whatever is turned on underneath it. So just using a layer mask like that, you can have a color fade into another color, and you can very easily drag the layer mask between colors. So say if you have it in red, green, and then you need it to be white, blue, literally all you do is drag the layer mask up from the red layer, put it on the white layer, and then turn on your white and blue, and it'll be fading from white to blue. So it's very easy. You can just have one layer mask and drag it between them. So you don't need to have a million layers for all your combinations of, because otherwise you would have to have your 5 base colors, gold, colorless, and then all 10 of your dual color combinations. And then if you want to do tricolor, all 10 of your tricolor combinations. It's so many layers. But if you just put one layer mask and drag it between them, you can get any combination of 2 colors just by using one layer mask. That's all for this part of the series. The next video is going to be about making a custom mana cost system. If you're interested in tabletop game design or card design, I'll be making more videos soon, so I'd really appreciate if you subscribe. I also want to talk for a second about where I've been for the past year and what the future of the channel is. So first I'm going to finish this 6-part series since I already have the videos recorded from a while ago, and then I'll be posting an announcement video about I'm actually creating my own completely original card game, and so from there I'll be posting fairly often showcasing the whole journey of designing this tabletop game from scratch. The name of the channel is also going to change since I'm dropping the hyphen name, but I'll explain that more in depth in the announcement video, and the rebrand will happen after that. If you're still subscribed now, the content won't be changing too dramatically. It's still going to be card design related, just more showing the process of making my own tabletop game rather than just Magic the Gathering proxies. If you're not subscribed yet and tabletop gaming is something that interests you, I'd love if you stick around and watch what I'll be posting in the coming weeks. I'm actually super excited to be showcasing the stuff that I've been working on for a while now. I think you guys are really going to enjoy the stuff I have planned for 2021. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.